November 24th, 1971, a cold, rainy day in Portland, Oregon. The air was thick with the anticipation of the Thanksgiving holiday. At the airport, a quiet, unassuming man in his mid-40s approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter. He wore a dark business suit. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle, paying in cash. The name he gave was Dan Cooper, a name soon to become legendary. Carrying a black attaché case, he calmly boarded the Boeing 727, just another face in the holiday crowd. No one gave him a second glance. He took his seat, 18C, in the rear of the aircraft. The cabin buzzed with the low chatter of passengers eager to get home. Shortly after takeoff, he lit a cigarette and ordered a bourbon and soda, appearing perfectly composed and relaxed as the plane ascended. A flight attendant named Florence Schaffner noticed him, but only as a polite passenger in a suit. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The flight was short, a mere 30-minute hop from Portland to Seattle, but this journey would be unlike any other in aviation history. Through the window, the lights of civilization below twinkled through the thick cloud cover, a peaceful scene belying the drama about to unfold. For the 35 other passengers and 6 crew members on board, this was just another routine flight. That was all about to change. As the plane flew towards Seattle, Cooper calmly gestured for the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, to come over to his seat. He handed her a folded envelope. Believing it was a lonely businessman's phone number, she simply dropped it into her purse, unread. Cooper leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a device in my briefcase." Her professional smile faltered. She retrieved the note and walked towards the galley, her composure beginning to crack under the sudden tension. Written in neat, all-caps felt pen, the message was clear and chilling. It described a serious situation and his non-negotiable demands. He wanted her to sit beside him. She complied, her heart pounding. He then calmly asked her to relay his instructions to the captain. To prove he was serious, he briefly opened his briefcase, revealing a glimpse of wires and red-colored sticks inside before closing it again. Schaffner, now convinced of the danger, walked with forced steadiness towards the cockpit to deliver the terrifying message to the pilots. The captain, William Scott, received the news with grave professionalism. A tense situation was now active on his aircraft. While the passengers remained oblivious, the crew was now operating under the secret, silent command of the man in seat 18C. The captain's voice crackled over the radio to air traffic control, relaying the hijacker's demands with chilling precision and calm. Cooper demanded $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, a fortune in 1971, equivalent to over $1.5 million today. He also requested 4 parachutes, specifically 2 primary back-style parachutes and 2 reserve chest-style parachutes. The request was oddly specific. While authorities on the ground scrambled to meet the demands, the Boeing 727 was instructed to circle over Puget Sound. The passengers were told there was a minor mechanical issue requiring them to burn fuel before landing. They remained unaware of the true danger. For nearly 2 hours, the plane circled. On the ground, FBI agents and Seattle police worked frantically to gather the money and parachutes. Cooper remained calm, even ordering a second bourbon. He was polite and considerate to the crew, a strange contrast to his menacing demands. His knowledge of the aircraft was impressive. He knew the 727 could not be refueled with passengers on board, a detail he incorporated into his plan. The request for 4 parachutes was a brilliant psychological move. It suggested he might take a hostage, keeping the authorities guessing. Finally, word came from the ground. The money and parachutes were ready. Cooper authorized the landing at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. At 5:39 p.m., Flight 305 touched down at Seattle-Tacoma. Cooper ordered the pilot to taxi to a remote, brightly lit section of the tarmac. He demanded that all window shades be lowered to prevent police snipers from getting a clear view of the cabin's interior. Once his demands were met, Cooper allowed all 36 passengers and flight attendant Florence Schaffner to disembark, unharmed. The passengers, stepping onto the wet tarmac, were confused but relieved, still unaware of the high-stakes drama that had just unfolded. A single airline employee approached the plane, carrying a heavy knapsack filled with the cash and the parachutes. The exchange was made via the aft stairs of the 727, a unique feature of the aircraft that would soon become critical to Cooper's plan. Once the money and parachutes were aboard, Cooper had the flight crew inspect them. He was meticulous and left nothing to chance. While this happened, a fuel truck approached and began refueling the aircraft for the next leg of the journey, as per Cooper's instructions. He rejected the military-issue parachutes initially provided, demanding civilian parachutes instead. He seemed to know exactly what he was looking for. With a new flight crew, a full tank of fuel, and his ransom, Cooper was ready. The first part of his audacious plan was complete. Around 7:40 p.m., the Boeing 727, now with only 5 people on board, roared back into the dark, rainy Seattle sky. Cooper's new destination was Mexico City, but he provided a very specific set of flight instructions that baffled the experienced pilots. He ordered them to fly below 10,000 feet, a dangerously low altitude for a jetliner, especially in mountainous terrain and bad weather. He also instructed them to keep the landing gear down and the wing flaps at a 15-degree angle, slowing the plane significantly. The pilots warned that these conditions were unsafe, but Cooper was adamant. His plan depended on this low and slow flight configuration. Most critically, he ordered them not to pressurize the cabin. This would allow him to open a door mid-flight without a catastrophic decompression. As the plane flew south, 2 Air Force fighter jets scrambled to follow, but they had to keep their distance to remain undetected. The storm and low cloud cover made tailing the 727 nearly impossible. Cooper had chosen his night and his weather conditions perfectly. Inside the cabin, Cooper ordered the remaining flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, into the cockpit with the rest of the crew. He was now completely alone in the passenger cabin. The final phase of his incredible escape was about to begin. Alone in the dark cabin, Cooper began his final preparations. He calmly tied the heavy bag of money to his body. He took off his jacket and tie, the symbols of the respectable businessman persona he had carefully maintained throughout the ordeal. He then put on one of the parachutes. Evidence later suggested he may have cut cords from the second parachute, possibly to secure the money bag. The crew in the cockpit noticed a warning light flash just after 8:00 p.m., indicating that the aft airstair was being opened. The captain's voice came over the intercom, asking if he needed assistance. Cooper's final, curt reply was a simple no. At the rear of the plane, Cooper was wrestling with the heavy door against the force of the wind, a testament to his strength and determination. The staircase lowered into the freezing, turbulent air. The roar of the wind and engines would have been deafening. He stood at the edge of the abyss, a lone figure poised between the relative safety of the plane and the raging storm outside. The temperature outside was well below freezing, and the wind speed was over 200 miles per hour. Survival seemed impossible. This was the moment of truth. Every action, every demand, every calculated risk had led to this single, breathtaking leap of faith. At approximately 8:13 p.m., somewhere between Seattle and Reno, the pilots felt a sudden change in air pressure and a slight upward movement of the tail. D.B. Cooper, along with his $200,000 and a parachute, had leaped from the back of the plane into the night. He plunged into a freezing, wind-whipped rainstorm over a vast, rugged, and heavily forested wilderness. The odds were not in his favor. The tailing fighter jets saw nothing. In the darkness and the storm, a single man falling from the sky was utterly invisible. The plane continued on its course, the aft stairs still deployed. The crew remained locked in the cockpit, unsure of what had just happened. 2 hours later, the plane landed safely in Reno, Nevada. The crew cautiously emerged from the cockpit to find the cabin empty. FBI agents swarmed the aircraft, searching for any clue the mysterious man might have left behind. They found precious little. They recovered his black clip-on tie, a tie clasp, and 2 of the 4 parachutes he had requested but left behind. They also found 66 unidentified fingerprints, but none have ever been matched to any suspect in any database. D.B. Cooper had done it. He had taken the money and jumped. He had quite literally vanished into thin air. The moment the plane landed in Reno, the investigation, codenamed Norjack for Northwest hijacking, began in earnest. The FBI was in charge. The immediate challenge was enormous, trying to pinpoint Cooper's landing zone within a vast, unforgiving wilderness in the middle of a storm. An army of searchers, including soldiers, police, and civilian volunteers, was mobilized to comb the dense forests of southwest Washington. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft scanned the landscape from above, but the thick canopy of trees made spotting anything nearly impossible. For weeks, the search continued. They found nothing. No parachute, no briefcase, no money, and no sign of the man himself. The FBI released a composite sketch based on the crew's descriptions, a man in his mid-40s with dark hair, brown eyes, and a calm demeanor. They also released the serial numbers for all 10,000 of the $20 bills, hoping someone would try to spend the ransom money. Thousands of leads were investigated. Every man named Dan Cooper was questioned. Countless suspects were considered and eventually ruled out. Months turned into years. The ground search was eventually called off. The case went cold, but the legend of D.B. Cooper only grew. Most investigators believed he couldn't have survived the jump, but with no body ever found, the tantalizing possibility of his escape remained. For 9 long years, the case remained completely cold. Not a single piece of credible evidence had surfaced since the night of the jump. Then, in February 1980, a young person was digging in the sand on the bank of the Columbia River, near Vancouver, Washington. His hands uncovered 3 rotting bundles of cash. The bills were decomposed and bound together with old rubber bands. The family turned the money over to the authorities. The FBI was electrified. This was the first real break in the case in nearly a decade. They meticulously checked the serial numbers. It was a perfect match. This was Cooper's money, a total of $5,800. But instead of solving the mystery, the discovery only created more questions. How did the money get there? The location was miles away from the FBI's estimated jump zone. Had their calculations been wrong all along? Geologists studied the river's currents and sediment, suggesting the money might have washed downstream from a tributary near the original search area. This supported the theory that Cooper did not survive the jump and that the money had been separated from him and washed away over the years. But with only a fraction of the money found and no other remains, the alternate theory lived on, that Cooper survived and simply lost some of his loot. In 2016, after 45 years of investigation, the FBI officially closed the active case on D.B. Cooper, redirecting resources elsewhere. It remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of the United States, a perfect or at least unpunished crime. The event led to major changes in aviation security. A device known as the Cooper vane was installed on all 727s to prevent the aft stairs from being opened in flight. Over the decades, dozens of men have been proposed as suspects, some even confessing on their deathbeds, but none have ever been definitively proven. Was he an experienced paratrooper with a military background, or just a desperate man who got lucky? The evidence is maddeningly inconclusive. The tie he left behind was analyzed in 2011, revealing particles of rare earth elements, suggesting he may have worked in a specific high-tech industry. D.B. Cooper has become a modern folk hero, a symbol of rebellion against the system, a man who took on the government and won. His story has inspired books, films, songs, and endless speculation online, with amateur sleuths still trying to crack the case today. Did he perish in the unforgiving wilderness, his bones and the money scattered to the elements? Or did he land safely and live out his days in quiet anonymity? We will likely never know, and perhaps that is the most enduring part of his legacy. The man who jumped out of a plane and became a ghost, a legend, a question mark in the sky.